back. You're listening to Houston Real Estate Radio. And last segment, we were talking with Judge Robert Eckels. He's still here in the studio, and he is the president of the Texas Central Railway. They're a private company, and they have a proposal out to put in the high-speed rail between Dallas and Houston. So we've been talking about that. A lot of great information, and it's really an exciting project. I mean, for people to be able to get from Houston to Dallas in 90 minutes and not have to go through airport security, it sounds pretty good to me.
I tell my friends in Dallas they can come down to Houston and watch baseball in air-conditioned comfort in the afternoon and get back in time for dinner. And they always laugh, and then they hiss a little bit. They say, yeah, and you can come up here in October and watch the playoffs because you won't be doing that in Houston. So there's a lot of it's a friendly competition between the two cities, but a lot of folks have family and businesses that are offices in both cities. So we think it's a pretty good market.
And there are a lot of places that y'all looked at putting a rail like this in the United States because it doesn't exist right now. And there are a lot of places you looked at it. Why is the Houston-Dallas area the best place?
Well, when you look around the country, you have a traditional corridor like the Northeast Corridor running from Washington, D.C. through New York to Boston. A lot of people on that corridor. It would be a really sweet spot for a high-speed rail, but it's 9 states. There's legacy carriers right now operating on it, particularly Amtrak. It's very crowded right-of-way, very expensive to build, and the politics is very difficult going through those 9 states and the communities you deal with. California probably has more people than Houston, but it's got seismic issues, a lot of terrain, mountains and valleys, and it's California. It has a whole different set of regulations, and you see what they're going through now in California as they try to do a system. It's a state system, and that's a challenge being state-sponsored. The first thing with Houston and Dallas is you've got 7 million people in the Dallas region today, almost that many in the Houston region. And that Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex in Houston gives us 2 markets, so the trains aren't going from like Chicago to St. Louis, where you've got a big city with people going one way and then going back. They're 2 big markets, and people will be filling the trains both ways every day. The distance is ideal. It's 240 miles. It's a real sweet spot for this technology. Again, this is the 5th generation Shinkansen train in Japan that runs at 205 miles an hour. So with downtown Houston, downtown Dallas, with service to that Fort Worth region, and a stop at Bryan College Station, it's less than 90 minutes, which is really a convenient kind of time for people. It's flat. There's existing rights-of-way along that corridor, and Texas has a real business-friendly climate. As we see from the real estate business here, people are coming to Texas. The energy markets have consolidated into the Houston region. A lot of growth in both cities and in both ends of this train. We think that by 2035, it's not our number, the state demographer has come up with about 25 million people will live in this corridor. So it's growing.
A lot of people.
A lot of people. A lot of folks are going to need real estate, and it's an opportunity for this market to grow for our technology. It also provides, interestingly, because this is a real estate show, great transit-oriented development on each end, the ability to tie in.
It could impact housing trends, no doubt.
Sure. The housing plus the offices, hotels, retail, the things that go in around stations. And around the world, traditionally, the high-speed rail station will connect with Metro, particularly in the downtown Dallas area, the DART, their rapid transit, and their train that runs to Fort Worth. And in Houston with Metro, the Gulf Coast Rail District, long-term planning will include all of that. And traditionally, you see a more extensive residential and commercial development going in around the train stations.
Let's talk about the eminent domain issues with trying to acquire all of this land. So you kind of have some options. You can purchase the land that
we can negotiate with.
You don't know the route, what it's going to be yet. Y'all are working on that, but once you do know it, you can negotiate to buy their land.
Sure.
You can negotiate just to pay them for an easement right away. But you do have eminent domain powers. You can take the land if you have to.
Sure. We're a common carrier like pipelines and power lines, and in fact, BNSF or Union Pacific or Kansas City Southern Railroad that operates in this area as well. We do have that authority. It's kind of fun being a private company because we can be a little more flexible on how we deal with property along the way. One of the sweet spots on this route, though, that made them select it was that at least half of this route will be in or adjacent to existing rights-of-way, existing railroad tracks, utility lines, roadways. There are places we can go where we don't have to do that. Then where we do, people sometimes get confused again because they think of the big freeway projects or something in Texas. This is a pretty narrow corridor. We'll either be elevated or be, if we're at grade, it's at the most like a county road coming through as far as the size of the grade that we take. It's between 40 and 100 feet wide. Again, totally fenced, totally secure. The big issue we've had as we get in the rural areas seems to be more the access across the railroad for cattle, wildlife, tractors and cars and people getting back and forth across their ranches. And we're very sensitive to that as far as adding either a culvert kind of passage through our embankments, bridges and things through our embankments if we have embankments, or being elevated. And we think about 100 miles of the train at least will be elevated because of environmental issues or because of congestion or tight areas where we have to build. And again, where we're elevated, we'll probably only be 50 feet high, and at that point, it's just free passage under the track.
Very interesting. All right. So this is on a rail. It looks very similar to a regular railroad track,
Sure.
right? That it's running on.
It's a regular railroad track, except it has no other trains. It is isolated. It is much tighter tolerances. In Japan, their experience and their philosophy is to avoid collisions, avoid derailments. They maintain the track every night. They run 200 miles an hour. You don't have room for errors. And so you make sure you do it right. Their philosophy is collision avoidance and accident avoidance, as opposed to the American philosophy, which has been collision survival. And so as a result, we have wrecks and people get killed. In Japan, they just don't have wrecks. They don't derail in earthquakes. There is one track going north, one track going south. You don't have trains heading towards each other. The trains in this market initially will be every 30 minutes, but as needed, they could be increased to either longer trains. We think we'll run a 400 to 500 passenger train to start. In Japan, they run a 1,328 passenger train, so they have a much bigger train than we'll run. We will design our system to accommodate growth for the future. And again, if we run a train every 30 minutes. We could run a train in Japan. They run every 4 minutes.
Now, let's talk about the cost. Right now, you're anticipating what kind of cost to go from Dallas to Houston or vice versa?
We understand we're competing with airplanes, Southwest Airlines, United American.
And gas prices for cars.
And cars. And again, if it's mom and dad and the kids and you're going for the weekend with grandma, you can probably drive it cheaper and have your car to run around if you want to do that. But the real market for us is the business traffic is going up for the day or just going to spend one night and come back. We modeled it at about 80% of commercial airfare as an average ticket price. But in fact, it's a private company, and we'll charge what the market is for the train. We don't want empty seats, so we know in off-peak periods and for advance purchase, we'll have a lower price fare. We'll have a first-class cabin that charges more, and if you want to have a scotch or a glass of wine or have your shoes shined on the way, we'll take care of that for you too. So it's going to be interesting to see how this market develops in the United States, but we're very cognizant of the fact that we're the first train, and we want it to be a first-class experience, and the Japanese have a real interest in a reputational risk in making sure it's successful.
So a 90-minute trip to Dallas with 3 stops on 312 miles of track.
240 miles of track.
240 miles of track. And going how fast?
205 miles an hour.
Do you see any obstacles in the way of completing this project?
Well, there's always obstacles, things that we haven't seen, but we try to foresee. We've done preliminary environmental work and find that the train has no fatal flaws from an environmental perspective or right-of-way perspective. We have investment-grade market studies completed and support from the major Japan Bank for International Cooperation, major debt providers for the project, a lot of interest in the equity. So, you do have the environmental process to work through. We have the property acquisition. Again, we can take easements. We can't take land, so we'll have to work with the property owners. That's always a challenge. And the financial package. It's not all complete yet, but it's a great project, and it's taking a great step forward as we start the formal environmental assessment process with the FRA in August and September.
When do you anticipate everything being constructed and completed?
We expect that it will take 18 months. Could take a little longer, depending on the federal, how fast it moves in their bureaucracy. Another 4 years to build it and be operational by 2021. 2021.
Okay, so those folks that are looking at A&M in the future of their children by 2021 might have a prayer of using it.
From Dallas, they can come down and go to U of H and get a real education.
All right. Well, Judge Robert Eckels, we appreciate you coming on the show. Great information, and I hope this works out for you guys.
It's exciting for the state of Texas, and it's a great project to be involved with.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. We'll be right back here on Houston Real Estate Radio.